Alright, so let's carry on with our skin weighting. So in the first part we went over like all of the basics and the essentials for getting your skin weighting done. And everything that you need to know about skin weighting pretty much is in that first video. So what we'll do now is we'll carry on and we'll get in and we'll start cleaning up the weights on this character. Alright, let's go. Alright, so I remember from previously the under this area here, I want to give some of this weight back to the neck. When my jaw is rotating, it's pulling a little bit too much of this back this way, and I want to clean that out. So let's go and do that now. Set my tool to add. I'm going to undo that and come back one joint. And then I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to mirror those skin weights. I'm going to put that on my toolbar. Control Shift, by the way, is the shortcut for adding anything from any of these menus onto your bar. And if you want to remove them, you can right click and delete them. Okay, so we've got that. I'm going to come to my jaw. Ignore my cat's going crazy. Now, ideally, this weight would be on this bottom jaw controller, seeing as this is what's controlling the mouth. So I might actually do that. And I'll smooth those weights out there. Not too much smoothing down here because I don't want to bring that problem back that I was trying to avoid in the first place. And I'm just sort of spreading the weight between this area here, and I'll go and give that a test now and see where we're at. Just click on the axis that I want to access. In this case, it's the x-axis, and then like a middle mouse drag in my scene, and it'll do the things. And that's good. I'm getting good. I've added some weight back to this area here, sort of carefully, so that when I activate the jaw, it feels like the jaw is actually opening up. But we do have some weights from the jaw down here that are pulling this area here. So in order to solve that, I'm going to just leave the jaw open a bit there, come to the vertices in this little area down here, grab my lasso tool, and I grab that chunk, component editor, and my B joint is where I've put all my weight. So I'm going to just wipe out the B joint from that section there for now, and then come back and test this out. No, still doing the thing. Where did I do the thing wrong? So maybe it's coming from the jaw, the other jaw joint as well. So let's go and have a look. So jaw B and jaw A, these can both be zeroed. There we go. They're both gone. So there we go, that's better. There's still some small weights down here happening, but that's fine. We can come and deal with that in a sec. Just going to zero out that rotation. I'm going to come to my mesh. I like to prune my small weights every once in a while. Pruning small weights, again, it will just go through. If you click on the option box, it comes up with a little menu here, and you can basically use this to just get rid of any small errant weights around the model. And I might increase this up to 1.5 and then prune those small weights. And that's done a little bit. And yeah, if you find that like you're rotating the arm and then you rotate it out 90 degrees and you're just getting like very small points like moving with that joint, prune weights is a great way to just sort of very quickly deal with some of those errant points. Alright, so okay, I'm going to select this mesh, I'm going to mirror those skin weights. So we're getting some stuff happening down here, so what I'm going to do is on that section there, pretty much down to here, I want nothing from here being controlled by the jaw, any of the jaw joints. So these two jaw joints in here, I'm just going to obliterate those from that selection. I turn my my little thing on here, sorry, so we can actually there we go. Now you can see my little the button press thing down there. Okay, so that's doing what I want. It's pulling a little bit too much of this, but otherwise that's doing essentially what I want. Every once in a while I'll go and set some keys on some things, so in this case here I'm going to set some keys on this just so I can very quickly go and test an area out, and I'll take those keys off relatively quickly. But so we're going to come to the neck C and neck B joint. So I'll give neck B a fair bit to the front, so I'm just going to paint a fair bit of that to the front, and then neck C is going to get a fair bit of the stuff to the back. I just want to drop some of the control from the jaw joint from this back area of the neck down here. So I've got that in there. I'm going to go and smooth this out now. Lots of clicking. Even those attributes out there a little bit. Go. Now the back of the head's moving a little bit here, and I don't really want the back of the head to be moving too much, so again, first of all I'm just going to quickly mirror my weights. I tend to do this quite a lot, just isolating my mesh by pressing Ctrl 1, and I'm going to come vertex mode, grab my marquee select tool, and I'm just going to select this chunk of stuff here, and I'm going to just wipe this out. Now I may smooth some weights back into this area, but for now I just want to obliterate it and then add it back as I need it. So come to here, we're going to go to jaw A and B, and we're going to tell them to go away. There we go, they've gone away. There we go, we can, that's good. Now same up here, I don't want this to have any weight up here, so what I might do is I'll come to my head A or head B, whichever one, and I'm going to put this weight on straight onto I'll build it up slow. It's always good to build your weights up slowly. I'll put this onto head A here. Actually, I'll put it onto head B. There's no need to overcomplicate the weights in this area here. Still some weights down at the bottom there at the neck that are going with it that I can tease out. Just gonna add just a lick of smooth through this area here. For the most part, that's doing alright. There's some points up here I'm noticing that are going with that I don't want to. And again, this part sort of just comes down to a lot of just animate a section, have a look at it, and edit it as required, as needed. So again, just grab those points, come to here, we've got these all controlled by this, so I can just zero those out, and that's going to automatically send them to 1. I could have gone to the head and just put 1 as well, that would have also done the same thing. So same deal down here, I'm going to just select a chunk of this, Control Shift to get a slightly bigger chunk, and I'm going to obliterate these out as well. So this is just zero that out. There we go, that's gone. There we go. I'm not seeing anything too egregious happening here. There might still be some small weights around, but I'll go and do a prune at some point and we'll hopefully have that corrected up. Okay, so I'll put that back to there, select my mesh, mirror skin weights, and let's start analyzing some of our other joints now. So I'm going to select this chunk here, just give it one more little spot, and for the most part I'm pretty happy with that. I could probably smooth this area here just a little tiny bit more. So that's here under the jaw A section. So I'm going to set this brush to smooth and just smooth this section a little bit. Just undo some of the smooth strokes. I wanted to do a little bit less than what I did it at. Open the jaw up, then come back to that joint, jaw B, and soften just a little bit, just so there's a little tiny bit of movement in that area. There we go, and I'm going to mirror that, and now I'll have a look. That's alright, I'm happy with that. And then once I've done that, I'm going to come back to my joint here. I'm going to shift select these keyframes and just get rid of those. Now I don't need them. I'll set the rotation back on this to 0. And let's start checking some of our other bits of data. So there's my my thingy meshes here that are being moved away. See if we can address what's happened here. Assume preferred angle. So if you right click and assume preferred angle on the root joint, it will set the joints back to the position that they were bound in, essentially. It's a handy way of just making sure all the joints go back to their default pose. I might skin these to that same mesh cluster as well. So let's grab those, bind those. Now when I move this, they're staying with. I will go to the skin weights tool on these, and these are going to be 100% flooded to my head B joint. So I'm just going to straight flood that. So there we go. Alright, now when I come down to this joint here and I rotate this one, it's moving a lot of this mass that I don't really want. So I'm gonna, while I'm in this mode, I'm gonna come here, skin weights tool, and I'm gonna start trying to give some of this back to the shoulder a little bit, and maybe some to spine D as well. So neck A, spine D. Set these down really low so I can do this very gradually. Bit of smoothing. I'm always trying to keep my topology like looking clean, like through this area when I'm doing my weight painting. Go get a little bit on the left clavicle. Slowly trying to give back a little bit of weight. And I'm not doing it by adding, a lot of the time I'll add my weights just by smoothing. This can be a good way to just sort of, like, anytime you smooth, it's going to slowly spread the weights. So you can do this as a way to, like, sort of slowly spread weights over to where you want them. And once I've done that, I'm gonna come to this joint here, right click, assume preferred, select my mesh, mirror those skin weights, and then I'll go and check it again. It's not doing too bad. I might still give a bit more of this to my clavicles though. And have a look and see what these are, where these are going. Make sure there's nothing in here that shouldn't be in here. Okay, so clavicle, neck, spine. That all seems pretty reasonable. Nothing out of the order there. So add just very, very lightly. To this area here. This can be quite a fine balance, this little area here. Spine D. So spine D is a holder joint. There shouldn't be too much animation on this, but it should just hold the core mass of this torso area to help split between what the neck's doing and what the clavicle is doing. So it's a way to sort of like have an in-between, a middle ground, so to speak. So got that to there. Let's grab this controller here. There we go. I like what that's doing now. It's like stretching a little bit, but not too much. And it's not collapsing too much when I pull the head over to this side either. So that's good. Let's mirror that. There we go. Now, I want to you generally want to split the rotation of the neck across a few joints. So I want a lot less action happening down here. So a lot of this I'm going to give back to spine D as well. So I'm going to rotate the head like so. And then we come back into our weight paint tool. We come to spine D. And I'm going to start giving some weight back to this area. And a whole lot of smoothing. And again, I'm watching my topology as I'm doing this. So I want the topology to sort of feel clean, and so I will end up giving little bits back to the different joints in order to try and maintain that smoothness. And that should be sort of hold as a pretty straight line through here. So again, if you come down here, right click and hold, assume preferred. Oh, sorry, I'll grab that, mirror that, just in case I might have done that. I forget all the time. And twist that, and that's looking much nicer. There we go. So we've got relatively good head twist action happening. It's not collapsing too much in this area here. Yeah, we're getting good range of motion on the neck here. I haven't looked at the back too much, the back area too much. So here I'm going to have to solve some of this. A lot of this is moving too much with these neck joints. So again, I'm going to have to give some of this weight back to spine D, that joint that's here. So that's okay, we can do that. So let's set those all to 0. And if you're ever unsure whether it's all zeroed out, just again right click, assume preferred. Come to our skin weights tool now. I come to my spine D, and I'm going to put a pretty heavy value on it right now. I'm going to paint these spikes here so they follow with the torso for the most part. I may still have a little bit of weight going back to them from the neck joint, so maybe they feel like they're twisting a little bit, maybe, but it should be pretty subtle. I'm going to smooth that quite extensively. And then I'm going to mirror those weights. Let's give that a test again. Okay, so now it's a little bit too little weight. I'm going to rotate it around so it's in a pose where it's not looking super clean, and I can smooth that out a little bit. Lots of smoothing through here. Some of these neck joints have got weight going all the way down here that I can see, and again, if you have a hard time telling, you can always turn on your color ramp down here, and it makes it a little bit easier to see the data down there. Again, I don't generally prefer to use this, but it can be handy from time to time. So generally my solve for this sort of thing is if the neck comes to here, I don't really want it to have any influence sort of outside the neck area, and so I'll essentially just go through and start doing like obliteration passes where I'm like, okay, well I really don't want whatever that joint is, this is neck, sorry, bear with me, neck A, is that neck A? If you come into your outliner and press F, it will focus down onto it, so this is neck B. So neck A is down here. So neck A, B, and C, I can pretty safely say I don't want to have any value of control over pretty much this chunk of body. So I'm going to come into vertex mode, grab my lasso tool, and I'm pretty much going to obliterate out any neck values from here. I might take it even further than that. I might control shift. So if you mask your joints, because joints like to be selected at all times, like they'll prefer selection over other things. So if you mark each selection over a joint while it's selectable, it will select the joint instead of the vertices you're trying to select. So masking it out just lets it stop doing that. All right, component editor. Wait for it for a bit. Got a pretty large selection of vertices here. I am going to straight obliterate. Big joint selections tend to chug the component editor, so just be aware of that. Big vertice selections, sorry. There we go. Let's check that it hasn't added back. Sometimes it will accidentally, it will like add back to where you didn't want it to, so it is something you have to go and check. It's worth noting that when we use the component editor in this way, it will be adding, we won't have control where it adds the weights back. But it is worth noting that Maya does generally do a pretty good job of automatically reassigning cut weights to where they should have been. But nonetheless, so let's take a look now. So we'll go object mode and assume preferred angle. And unmask my joints. Excuse me. Now that's a little better. Still a little bit of movement happening here that I'm not super stoked about. But in general, I'm much happier. Yeah, in general, those are working pretty good. And let's have a look at our clavicles now. See how good they're working. They're working not too bad. They're pulling a lot of the weight of the torso, so I'm going to give a good amount of this torso to the joint down here. So this is my spine D. So I don't intend on rotating this joint ever. I intend on this joint staying like locked and pretty still. It may move a little bit with the IK, but we'll get to that. For the most part, most of that rotation should come from here. So ideally, I could put some of that that weight from this joint onto this joint down here, but nonetheless. All right, so let's now go through and let's have a look. So the spine D, I'm going to give this a fair bit more influence over this chest area here. And then I'm going to smooth it out quite heavily. I'm being careful around this area here because I have smoothed this area already and sort of blended the weights together with the neck joints, so I want to be careful to try and maintain that. Otherwise, I don't want to go ring around the rosy too much and sort of end up going back to places that I've already solved. Yeah, it is inevitable. Sometimes you will have to do that, but if you can be cognizant and try and limit it, life will be a little bit happier. We're going to scroll up to our left clavicle, and I'm going to smooth out the weights around here as well. Now my left clavicle's got a whole bunch of weight over this side of my mesh, so I'm just going to mirror those weights, and that should solve that for the most part. There's still a little bit over there, but in that case what I can do is I can come to my vertex mode, and we can isolate select and control 1 vertex, and I'm going to grab my vertex tool there, and I'm going to come through here, and basically with this selection here I'm basically going to say anything from the left side of my character should not have control over this side. So again, component editor, I'm going to look for any L's and zero them out. So left clavicle, there's my first culprit. Just wait for it again. Large vert selections do tend to chunk out the component editor a little bit. There we go. Just Wait for it. Extra chunky at the moment. There we go, that's gone. That looks fine. I'm going to mirror those weights. Deselect, and yeah, still a little bit of stuff going over this area here. So I'm going to go to vertex mode and grab my paintbrush. I'm just going to paint these selections here, just so my component editor isn't quite so chunky. And then we'll come over to our smooth skins. We can wait for it. And now this time we'll obliterate our clavicle. Zero that out. Right, clavicle up arm. That looks all good. And that's better. So now straight away, mirror those joints, mirror those weights. We may need to hand paint some of those weights out from both sides. The mirror feature does have a tendency to do this. When I'm mirroring, it's putting some small minor weights over on this side of the character. It happens. You just have to hand paint it out. That's not a big deal. But for the most part, this shoulder is doing the sort of things that I would expect it to do. Now, one thing that's worth noting is that almost no matter what you do, you'll need to end up generally doing some corrective shapes for when your arm does this kind of thing. So when you want the arm to come up into an extreme angle, it's worth noting, a lot of people sit there and they go, okay, well, I put my arm like this, and this is not how the arm gets to this position. The arm gets to that position with a combination of rotations from the arm joint and then the clavicle joint. And it also has a tendency to rotate forward and then rotate up, maybe even back a little bit. That's generally the method for how the arm goes into this pose. Now, there's meat and bone and stuff inside this area, which on a person holds the volume. But in our character, extreme rotations don't hold the volume, so we may need to go and do some corrective blend shapes in this area to clean that area out. But as long as we get it close, for the most part, we should be all right. Now, this is not looking too bad over here. There's a little bit too much weight on the shoulder here in this case. So what I can do is I can come to my weight tool. You can see how that's our left clavicle. And then our spine C, spine B, C, C. So I'm going to give some of this weight back to the, oh, we got to watch our mirroring there. Some of this weight back to there. Some of it's going to go back to spine D. There's lots of smoothing through this area here. Go. Now I'll come back to this in a bit. So there's definitely some weights still now being pulled from down here that I don't want to be pulled from down here, so I'm going to have to I'll go and address those. I'm going to do those directly. That'll do for now. I'm going to give the clavicles a little bit more control over the chest area here. They're a little bit too collapsed. That's a bit better. Could still use a little bit of smoothing. So smoothing between these and the spine D joint down here. So I'm reasonably happy with that for a simple guy. There is some splitting of values happening across the spine area here, which I would like to sort out. So what I will do in this case is I'm going to this is the left hand side of my character, so I'm going to select some vertices on the left hand side of my character and then remove their weight from the right side. So including this, actually no, not including the center line. The center line should have like 50-50 essentially. So anything here on this side here should not be influenced over here. So it's one of those things when you're mirroring, you've got to take these weights away in order to mirror that across to the other side, which is the same thing that's happening with this section of chest over here as well. So here we go, component editor. We're going to wait for it to sit there and chug for a bit. And then so this is the left clavicle, so I want the right clavicle to have no influence over this area. Still a little bit of cleanup needing to happen down the bottom here. There's some values here that aren't super smooth, so it's going to smooth those out. So I'm going to smooth spine C, smooth spine there, smooth here, smooth the clavicle through this area. And I get the feeling there's some errant weight here, so all of the things that should be controlling this area, not quite cleaning it out when I smooth it, so I'm going to go and have a look and see if there's any errant weights in this little spot here. Alright, so we're going to come back to our component editor again. Unfortunately, the component editor can be quite a laggy tool, but its power is worth the lag, unfortunately. So let's have a look and see. So all of these spine joints, this is left upper arm. I think the left upper arm's got some pretty heavy weights on this area here, so I'm gonna wipe these out because I don't really want my arm having any weights in this area. Again, we're going to come back and we're on the clavicle, so I'm going to smooth to there. I'm going to set my smooth strength down a little bit so that it's not quite so extreme. clavicle to have any control this low down. At least not as much as it had. And I'll come through and I'll set my smooth strength back up again, and I'll start smoothing out things controlling this area here. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So my character's bent over. I want the tummy not to be, I don't want it to be too compressed. So again, I'm going to come in this area here and I'm going to try and solve some of that just by putting a little bit more weight back to the root joint here. A little better. All right, and I want to put these shapes here a bit small, connected to the hip area. So come to my hips, and we'll make these a little bit more solid. In particular, the spiky bits here, I want these to be pretty connected with that area. And I'll end up doing a lot of smoothing in this area just to So this will be pivoting from up here. I can't change the pivot point on this to test it because a pivot point is joints almost have their own wall space. So if you change the pivot point on a joint, it actually changes the location of the joint. I can look at what's happening around that area, like so. Go. There's all sorts of creative solutions that you can come up with to solve like some of the challenges of skin weighting. So for example, the abs in particular, the abs are a sheath of muscle that pretty much connect from the bottom of the rib cage down to the top of the hip, and when they contract, they don't bow in as much as you might expect as they do when you're bending these joints here. So there are creative solutions that you can come up with. You could place a joint in this area here and basically use constraints to drive that joint, or SDKs if you wanted to, basically just as a way, and then weight that to this area, and then you could use that as a way to get more finite control over how this section of anatomy moves, to try and get it a bit more accurate. It's commonly done with things like the shoulder blades. People will commonly have setups where they have a few extra joints in the shoulder blade area here, and they'll use a series of constraints basically to control those joints so that they act a bit more like shoulder blades when the arms are rotating, or when the shoulders are rotating more than the point. But we're not going for anything too crazy here. We just after just general weights. Now these legs here, when we get to these are another area I want to solve. So this is morphing a bit too much for me, so I'm going to raise that leg up, come to my skin weights, and let's kind of start having a look at some of these areas. So in this case here, I'm going to come to my hip joint, and I'm going to set my tool to add, and again just build up slowly. I don't mind having a little bit of angle tweaking on this joint area here, but I don't want it to be too extreme. I would prefer to see the mesh clipping as you would expect. Normally you'd expect to see the skin in these two areas start pressing against each other as the two folds of skin sort of come together. But without having some sort of muscle system or sort of constraints to say, that the mesh can't go through the other section of mesh, a bit of mesh clipping here is generally fine. That's generally okay. So add that in there like so, and then we'll come to the next leg joint here. Now I don't want the leg to have any weight in this area here, so I'll probably end up making a selection here for the leg, just to say like, hey, don't come do anything to this area. I might do that now actually, because I'm going to come to vertices, we're going to go paint, shrink the brush down, and we're basically going to, just for this, this selection here, I'm going to obliterate from the leg. So we'll open up our laggy component editor tool. And the left upper leg, I'm going to erase from this section. Actually, both the left and right. The right should have no weight over this section here, so I'm going to select both of these. Watch it stops lagging. Alrighty. And so far so good. There's a little bit of grooseness happening in the midsection there, so I'm going to assume preferred angle on this, and we're going to come to that skin section there. So the leg's got a fair bit of weight over in this area over here as well, so we go vertex. Yeah, I'm going to save my scene and we'll come back in just a minute. All right. So let's save that scene file. Save scene as. It's going to be part 2. All right, and we'll be back in just a minute. All right, and we're back. Continue on. Okay, so we're going to look at the weights in here. Okay, so we've got some weights on here that I want to get rid of. So I'm going to come vertex mode on this. I'm going to go back to the lasso tool, and we're basically going to shoot all of this, everything over here, and I'm going to get the left leg off this selection. I may need to smooth some of this back out. We may want some data on this area here, but just for the time being, I'm going to eradicate the left leg from this selection. There we go. The old closing Maya down and restarting Maya often will solve the component editor, stop it from lagging a little bit. So, all right, there we go. So there's that done. Let's go and have a look around Jabroni. All right, so there's still a bit of weight on the left leg down, the leg down here. So again, it's worth remembering I'm mirroring from positive to negative, so it can be tempting to be like, oh, I'll take the weight away from here and that's going to solve my problem. In actuality, I need to actually take the mirrored value from the other leg away for that data to mirror over. So instead I'm going to come to this side, go to my go to my component editor with that selection, and we're going to take the right leg off this side, and that will in essence take the left leg off when we mirror it. So zero that out. All right, and now I can mirror those skin weights, and that will have removed the weight from this side. A little counterintuitive, but it's just one of those things. And so the same thing's going to happen over here. If I fall prey to this all the time, I'll go and remove these. I literally just did it before. I went and removed these weights over here. And then when I go to mirror my weights, they come straight back again because I actually need to remove this leg's version of that from this side when I mirror it. Otherwise, I'm just going to put it back there every time I mirror. So we need to go, okay, cool. So in this case, I'm going to come to the right upper leg joint, and I'm going to obliterate this data from that joint. So we can go into here, we can go to there, we can go, okay, cool, I can see those vertices. We're going to come into these sections here, and on this side, so this is my left side, and I want to obliterate my right side joint data from this bit. Now again, we may do a little bit of damage here that we might have to smooth out, but now when I mirror this, I come back to my skin weights and I go back to my left upper leg. Now that weight is now gone. So again, it can be a little, especially if you're dyslexic like I am, it can be very difficult. Sometimes you see the weights over here you don't want, and you go to get rid of them. You're like, I've got rid of them, and then you mirror the weights over, and then they come straight back again. And again, the reason for that is because this leg actually had the weight on this side, which we ignored, and then when we mirrored the weights over, it just brought it straight back again. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm going to smooth some of these weights out through this area now. Some of this I want to go back to the hips. So again, I'm going to come and dump that weight in there and then smooth this out quite heavily. Again, I want this to go pretty much straight through here with mostly hip weight. And then nice soft values on that area down there. Come down here, mirror those weights, and we'll control one, and we'll take a look and see how we're looking. we go. That's not looking too bad. The leg's not deforming this area a great deal. It's got a little bit of influence, but not a huge amount of influence. And yeah, when the leg gets to here, now I need to go and put some more weight in this area. So again, I'm going to come to my skin weight section here, and here we basically are going to be toggling between these two joints here. So when I come to add, and I come through, and I'm gonna not to that joint. I want to preserve volume in this exchange here. So I want to give the leg joint some weight back here, but I want it to not be too smooth. I want it to be pretty harsh to the point that it's probably clipping, just so that this volume through here is maintained. So I'm going to set my strength right down on this, and then just slowly try and bring some of this leg data back to where it once was. But again, I don't want to go too close. I still want to maintain this mass. We want this to be a pretty tight bend through this area here. There'll still be a bit of smoothing, but not a great deal. So I'm smoothing a little bit here now. And it'll be a case of smoothing between both all of the things in this area. Mostly just the hip and this joint here. My smooth brush is set quite low, so I'm going to turn that up a little bit. Maintained a good bit of mass there. Gonna let the butt be a little bit plumper by adding a little bit more weight back to it. There we go, that's about what I would expect to have. So I'm gonna see there's some weird something or other going on down here. So there's a few little errant weights. So again, just remember the whole mirroring left to right. So let's go and grab a sample of those weights, and let's see where that pasta leads us. Over here we've got right upper leg and right lower leg, and those should have no value over this area on the left side. So we're going to select both of those. Shift select that, zero that out. That should eradicate those errant weights from there. Now it's not going to do anything to that side just yet, but what we will do is we'll unmask selection. I'm going to assume my preferred angle, and then I'm going to mirror that over. And now that should be solved. And from here we can start moving this around, and we can start seeing how well it's working. And for the most part this is working pretty well. We do have some errant weights still, so there's some weights here, there's some weights here, and there's some stuff happening at the back that up here that we need to address. So we can go and solve those areas out. So I'm going to go vertex, and I'm going to paint a small selection of the vertices up in this area here where the problem is. And again, left side, work on the left side where you can. Component editor, and we don't want those to be connected to the left upper leg, so I'm going to zero those out. Connections to the rest of these is fine. So that should have sort of smoothed itself out if this joint hasn't moved, and it has. And so now we can look at the other areas that were causing an issue. So where were the other areas? So there's some data from this leg being pulled along. So what I'm going to do is, again, remember left side, so I'm going to grab a loop, grow that loop all the way up to about here, and then component editor. And again, this is the left leg, so it should have no influence from any of these other joints. We're seeing quite a few errant weights in this little list here. So again, this is the left leg, so I'd expect to see the hips, the root joint, the left lower leg maybe, and the left upper leg, and then everything else should pretty much be errant weight. So here we're seeing some stuff from the hand coming in there, so I'm going to get rid of all those first. We don't need any of that. And then we have right upper leg, right lower leg, so I don't want any of that in there. We'll zero that out. We should be left with reasonable. Yeah, this is reasonable. I don't think the spine should have any control in this area either, so let's zero that out. Let that share between the rest of those last 4 joints. And again, as soon as I've done that, I'm just gonna assume preferred, select my mesh, mirror those weights, and let's go and take another look. There we go. That's not causing any issues in that area anymore. Are we getting any errant weights? I'm not seeing any errant weights. There's a little bit of weight up here happening as we, so we can assume preferred. And again, we've made sort of a statement that there isn't any weight above the hip for that leg joint. So again, I'm going to just make a big old selection up here on this left side. Pretty much all through this area here. And we're going to make that statement. We're going to say, cool, the left leg should have no weight over this area here at all. So, component editor. And lower arm, left lower leg. Just a few small weights on that. Mirror those weights over. Come back to our tool. And for the most part, that's doing all right. There's still some weights from the right leg. Pulling this over here. So if I assume preferred, come to this here, we can see there's some odd weights from this side on this side of the mesh, so we're going to come and solve those. So vertex and all the center line points I'm going to split 50-50 with their weights. However, there's some points through here, so sometimes you can go in just one at a time. So shouldn't be getting controlled by legs at all, so split that out. Same goes for most things in this area here. There should be no upper left leg, no right leg at all, so those values can all get cleared. Mirror those weights. And that's doing most of the things that I want it to do. I'm not seeing anything else move on my character as I'm moving that leg, and that's sort of what we're looking out for. Alright, so we move on to the knee now. So when it comes to the knee, essentially my first goal is, again, move the joint, see if you see any errant weights moving around elsewhere on your model, and assuming that you're not seeing any errant weights moving around on your model, generally I'll put my knee into a a bent position, and I generally try and solve it from this pose here, as I can get the intersection between these two sections right. My goal in this case is to try and preserve the thickness of the knee through this section. So back to my skin weights tool. So this is generally going to require quite a tight gradient towards the back of the knee, where the lower leg has most of the weight for here and the upper leg has most of the weight up to here, with very little split value between. So yep, so I'm going to come to my lower joint first, and I'm going to add very soft values, and again I'm just going to give it some control back of these masses. So this should be pretty extreme, to be fair. And then come to my upper leg, and same deal. Give it a good bit of the control back. Let them intersect. Let them intersect quite a lot. And then smooth them out. You can rotate the leg back down if you need to. But this is our goal here. We want the leg to feel like it's got mass in this area. Like so. Same goes for the front of the knee. The front of the knee might split its values a bit too much, and so you may need to give a good amount of the knee back to the upper leg. Like so. A little bit of smooth to split the weight, but the knee should still feel kind of sharp. Not too sharp, but just still kind of a bit sharp. And I'm mostly happy with that there. There we go. The knee still feels a bit sharp. It's probably a little too sharp. I still need to probably spread a little bit of weight back, so there's a bit more movement in that area. Generally this is just a case of smoothing out a little bit so that the lower leg pulls a little bit more of this weight. And again, the smooth tool is a great way to sort of grow a selection a little tiny bit as you make your strokes. So this should hopefully make the knee not feel too static. So that's looking much better. There we go. That's holding its deformations quite nicely. And again, we can right click and hold, assume preferred. And it's always worth just checking to make sure you're not seeing any errant weights go flying around your mesh as you rotate that joint. I'm not seeing anything. I'll generally do a pass at the end as well, where I sort of go through and I like select all the things on the arm, make sure there's nothing from the legs there, select the legs, make sure there's nothing from the arms, and vice versa. And alright, we've done that. Now we can come down to the ankle and let's have a look at the ankle. So same deal. For the most part, there's some errant weights happening down here, which I'll need to sort out. These will be weights that are connected to the these are connected to the leg, so I'm gonna pretty much just obliterate those out, but I can do that in a couple ways. I can either come down here to the ankle and just straight, just gonna obliterate them out this way, because that's gonna be just as effective as going into the tool. And then I'm gonna grab a smooth brush and then I'll smooth those weights out a bit. There we go. And yeah, and then from here we're gonna be toggling weight between the heel and the lower leg. So again, I'm going to give a little bit more weight to the ankle bone here, as I want it to feel a bit more like a pivot. foot should feel like it's sort of rotating up from that position. Now, your ankle should only ever really, the range of rotation on the ankle is actually pretty minimal. So one thing that you got to be careful of when you're skin weighting just in general is make sure you're only skin weighting for the range that that joint can achieve. It can be really tempting to try and put an extreme rotation on there and make sure that it holds up. But sometimes by doing so, you stretch thin how the joint acts in between its actual range of motion. So it's always important to try and make sure that you're not trying to skin weight for this position to make this work, because that might damage the foot's ability to work in the range of rotation that it's supposed to have anyway. So in this case, you need to split a little bit more weight to this bit. So that's about as extreme as I'd expect that bit to get. And then as it's rotating up here, my pivot point for this is probably not quite in the right place. I probably want this to be a little bit lower. But for the most part, that should be fine. This is working as I would expect it to. You don't really want it to do too much more than this, and then if you unless you want to have actual toe joints, in which case you can weight them in much the same way that you would do the fingers. I will, however, let them preserve their mass a little bit more. So if we come to the upper foot, I'm not going to put anything on the lower foot. I will add a value of 1 to the majority of the toe section here on both top and bottom, and then I'll split the weight at the back a little bit more, not too much at the front, but just a little bit more. There we go. Yeah, we can see this is what it looks like before, and then you get after, and it's a bit fuller in that area. So again, I'm going to mirror those weights over now. There we go. And now we can do one last little bit. We can deal with the forearm here a little bit. And pretty much the same principle as with the leg. So we can come down to our forearm, left upper arm, and the left upper arm is going to get a bit more weight through this section here. Now I've got this set to a high value, but I'll set that down a bit so we can build that up. So we're going to set that quite high, and on the back of the elbow I'm going to drop my weights a little bit more, maybe not that much, and I'm going to let the upper arm take control of some of this original mesh a little bit. This will just help keep the elbow stable and rigid. Now when the arm bends, pay attention to this area. If it looks too rigid, it'll look unnatural, so you may need to soften those weights out back with the lower arm so that it feels like the skin is sort of stretching a little bit. Now lower arm, same sort of deal. So the upper arm's going to get some of these areas back. As you would expect. And then the lower arm is also going to get some of those areas back as well to maintain the mass through this section. And these should feel like they're pressing into each other. And we can smooth them out a little bit to soften back the data. There we go, there's a bit more mass being maintained in that area there. I still want to pull some of this data back here a little bit. Give that back to the upper arm through this section here. Now let it go over by quite a margin so that when I smooth it back, I can hopefully try and smooth it to somewhere in between. Control 1 if you find that the thingy view gets in your way. Go. Now I'd like to see a bit more mass in this area here, but in order to do that, we'll end up doing what we call a corrective blend shape a little bit later on. So there's only so much you'll be able to do with skinning, and if you want really nice deformations, then corrective blend shapes are a way of being able to basically sculpt in a custom shape for this area of anatomy for when the arm gets into this position, and then we utilize SDKs to then connect them together. But for now, that section is working all right for me. So the next thing we have to do is we have to quickly solve the forearm twist joint, which is down here. Now this joint just helps us maintain the volume through the middle of this arm here, so that when the elbow and the wrist joint twist from each other, this area doesn't collapse. And essentially it's just going to get a middle value through here that will then we'll take the rotation of the wrist joint and we'll split its rotation with this joint in general. So we're going to take that to there, and then I'm going to smooth, and I'm going to flood that joint heavily. We really want this joint to be a really soft, a soft rotation on this joint. There's an errant value here. I'm going to select this area, grow that a couple times and have a look and see what's holding that. Twist, lower arm, wrist, no, thumb, no. Just want to look at that one point. Lower arm. Alright, well let's try and weight paint that now and see if that's any better. Right, now the wrist is a complicated section. We can't really give it too much softness coming down the wrist, as it needs to rotate quite angularly. So we don't want it so that when we rotate down, too much value is going up, or vice versa. And then the same for left and right. If the wrist is rotating this way and this way, we really want the area right next to this area to stay pretty much still, so it doesn't have a lot of split value. So what we're going to do is I'm going to come to my paint weights, and then my forearm twist joint is going to get a bit more of the weight down this end than the wrist gets. So I'm going to give the forearm twist joint sort of like a bit of a gray value down here. I don't want it to be like 100%, but I want it to be about 50%. I want it to hold the shape of this joint here a little bit, and I want it to be the dominant force of twist through this section of the arm, with a little bit coming from this joint, from this wrist joint. And again, we'll need to go through and do some testing on some of this area in a bit. So we can take our forearm twist joint and we should be able to rotate it on the Y, and it should do the majority of our twisting. If we grab both at the same time and twist, we should get rotations that don't collapse. Now we may need to smooth some of this out, and the wrist will generally do a bit more twisting than the rest will. I might give it a bit more control over this joint area here. arm values coming down here that are sort of damaging this area, but that's okay. We can eradicate a lot of those. Say down to about here for now. We'll smooth out the data later, but then we're going to take away the upper arm from this section here. So that's good. There's a couple of errant weights on the leg here from the wrist that are causing some issues. So I'll delete those. There shouldn't be anything from the hand here. Weights, and we can test this out. I'm not seeing anything happening on the body. That's deforming the way I want it to. That is deforming the way I want it to, more or less. Yep. That's good. Now we can go and test our fingies. So that finger's alright. And again, the same deal for these. So when we're painting these, we want to maintain volume. Where it's reasonable to do so. So come down to thumb, and then on the thumb B section, see on the thumb A section, I'm going to come to add. The thumb A is going to get a lot of weight through this section here. You can actually take the weight of the rest of the thumb. The end effector doesn't need to do anything in this particular case. A little bit of smoothing, and again give the bottom joint a fair bit of weight as well, and we still smooth through it a little bit, but we don't need to smooth through it a lot. So smooth all those weights there. We're going to give the thumb a bit more through this section and then smooth it out quite a lot. And give it a test. So that's doing more or less what I want it to do from that section there. This is where most of the action from the thumb happens, is from this sort of joint here. And then this joint here is potentially moving a little bit too much of this down here, so we can come to skin weights, go to that joint, smooth some of that out, come back down here. And what I might do is I might come and grab, let's say, those vertices there, and I'm going to take the end thumb off them. So D and C of the thumb. We've got pinky, pointer, thumb A, B, C. There's no thumb D, so I'm going to 0 out that. And a little bit of smoothing through these here. So D's got nothing, that's great, that's what I want. So there we go, so that thumb's still taking a bit more of this than I would like it to. So let's tighten that up a little bit. So come to thumb A, this is for thumb B. Give some pretty heavy values through here. Thumb C. So this is now working much more akin to how I want it to work. However, it is pulling some of these weights over here. And I don't want it to do that. So again, same deal, just pay attention to what joint that was. So this was object mode, this was thumb C. So we're going to come to this here. And again, I'm just going to quickly obliterate thumb C out of the control of this area. And it should, more or less, redistribute relatively well. Still got a little value in here coming from thumb C, so let's 0 that out. And there we go, that one's doing the thing. This one's doing the thing. This one's moving a little bit too much of this, so again, I'll go through and I'll 0 that out. So for here, I'm going to assume preferred angle, and before I get too carried away, I'm going to mirror my weights. So now my thumb should work reasonably well over here. Relatively well here. And pretty well there. And we now continue. So again, this area here is getting a bit too much in here, so I'm going to give some of this, not actually back to the thumb, because I don't want the thumb to control this, but I want the wrist to control this. So I want to give the wrist a little bit more weight in this area here. So skin weights. Dosh in a bit of smooth around there. We're going to come back up to the wrist. And I'm going to give the wrist a little bit more control in this area to take away from the fingy there. Now these will have a little bit of weight back through here, but not a lot. So okay, so pinky's first for some reason. Okay, that's fine, we can deal with that. So this joint here shouldn't have much here, so the wrist should have most of this weight down here. So I'm actually going to put this weight in fairly heavily to the wrist. I want the wrist to have pretty strong control over the sort of pads of the hands, and most of this area as well. I will end up giving some control to the to the knuckles in this area, but again, we still wanted the wrist to have a lot of the control in this space. And I'll smooth them back a little bit so the weights aren't too strong. Okay. That's good. The knuckle holds. Might take it to about the limit of its extreme. You can't really bend your fingers back too much further than this, but I will just soften out that extreme a little tiny bit. Just with a little bit of soft. Little bit of soft brush on there. There we go. There we go. And that's working quite nicely. Now there's a lot of weights from this finger pulling on the other side. Again, we're just going to do our component editor trick to solve most of that problem for us. So there's that. Same deal here with the fingers, just like with the leg. When we come into this area here, with our skin weights, we can go through these joints here and we say, okay, well this joint here, we're going to add, and we add quite heavily back to this part of the finger, so this part of the finger stays well mounded. And then we do the same on the bottom part. So there should essentially be some intersection between the geometry in this area. And then once you've done that, then we can go through and give everything a bit of a smooth, just to soften everything off. Everything should then be nice and rounded and coming into an intersection as we should expect. Like so. And we can do the same for the next joint down the chain. Generally I put it in essentially a 90-degree pose, and then use the tool to essentially sculpt it until it looks sort of what it should look like. So we come to B, we go add, and we add quite heavily to this part here for B. And then on C, we also add quite heavily to that part, so that they sort of try to intersect with each other. Can be a little tricky looking around the fingers like this. You can isolate the selections if you want to. Just select the faces and press Ctrl 1, and that will help. That'll help your visibility of the area a little bit. And when we're finished with this, we're going to steal all this skin weight for our fingernails, so our fingernails just do the same thing that they were supposed to do underneath. And we do the same on the top. So same on the top here. This finger should have a pretty strong bend line through here, so we'll end up making sure to give weight in the right area. So here, that one goes to there, that one goes to there, that one to there, that one to there. Okay, so this has got a, whoop, nope, wrong one. Essentially something like that for the fingers. Could probably use a little bit more smoothing, but more or less that's what we're after. So you should be able to put the hand into a sort of a pose like this. If you've got your finger length right, you should essentially be able to get to something like this and the meshes on the fingers should feel pretty good at this point. So generally I'll put it into this pose and then give it a bit of a sculpt to try and make sure that that is the case. So I'm going to add a little bit onto the back of this one. So that feels like it's nice and tight. And in that case, I'm pretty happy with it. Just pulling some weights from the other finger, but that's okay, I can deal with that. And then we do the same for this one here. So, shoot preferred angle and rinse and repeat. First off, take this one, bend it down, and make sure these masses thicken out the way you would expect them to. So first add, then on the pointer we'll add a little bit in this area so they feel like they're intersecting well. I'll smooth some of those weights back a little bit. I'm relatively happy with where the knuckle is. And we can come down to the next joint, rinse and repeat. Rotate this into position so that it's essentially at 90 degrees, and then these two masses should essentially intersect with each other. And we're just about done. So we'll come to this one here. We're going to give back some weight to this. You may end up going over a fair bit, and that's okay because we'll smooth all that weight back. I'm going to take my thumb here, and just for now I'm just going to rotate that out of my way so I can see what I'm doing. There's that one. We come to this one. Same deal. There we go. I'm going to mirror those weights across, and we should and more or less that's our skin weights done. So let's just give it a quick check over. Alright, so these are following with neck B. These need to follow with head A. So let's flood those with head A. Okay. More or less, that's all right. Good, it's good volume preservation. That's okay. The pivot point on that is not exactly where I would like it to be, so I might correct that. Actually, I'm not happy with where that pivot point is, and this will be a good chance to show you that even if you've done your skin weights, it's not the end of the world if you need to go and adjust something. So it will mean I need to repaint this section, but that's okay. That's not a bad thing. So what I can do is if I so we got that on there. This is turned to snap, so I can. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect some of these joints. Shift P, and I'm going to select these two joints here, and I'm going to skin, edit influences, remove influence, option box, shift select the cluster, and apply. That's going to take these out of that skin weight set. Now this is probably this will do some damage, but that's okay. We can come back and fix this up in a second. Now I'll do the same over here. So I'm going to select these, Shift P these, this joint, this, apply. So these joints are no longer in my skin cluster. So what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to scale these down a little bit, just so the pivot points are where I want them to be. So it's going to look all broken for the time being, but that's okay. Okay, so they're moved down. Now, I don't need to worry too much here. I'm going to freeze transforms on these joints. That's going to clean out the scale data. Hold on, still has a skin attached, so I'll Shift P that, and then I'll freeze transforms. I still reckon it's got the skin cluster data on it. These were removed. Modify, freeze transforms. just now I have to actually see, make sure that hasn't blown everything apart. That should be fine. So I've just deleted the second skin cluster, and there was a skin cluster attached to these bones, and I need to freeze their transforms to get rid of the scale data. I couldn't do it because it wouldn't let me get rid of my skin cluster on them, so I can freeze transforms on those now. Their things have been positioned in a way that hasn't messed with their alignment. That's something I'm trying to be very careful of. If you remember from the previous video when we were creating our joints, we need to treat the orientation of this joint very carefully. So I don't want to translate this lower point at all, or it's going to break the plane of this. So when I add my IK handle, the whole leg, it will rotate a little tiny bit, making a FK IK switch not seamless, which would be not super great. So I've disconnected these two joints. I've made the positional change that I needed to make on them. For some reason I was having it there, I disconnected them and removed their influence, so that should have removed their bind, but it didn't for some reason. And so in order to remove their bind, I've selected them, and I've gone Windows, General Editors, Hypergraph Connections, and that shows the joints in here. And then there was a skin cluster in here, and then I deleted that skin cluster. Now all of my skinning should still be fine. Everything up here is all fine. Yeah, it's pulling weights down here because these weights have to all be distributed to other joints, but that's okay. I don't mind that so much. I just care about whether all of these are fine, and that is the case. Everything up above should be no different, so that's good. So I assume preferred on that. So I've made those corrections now, so I can plug these back in. Parent, this one, parent, this one, parent, this one, parent, and now I can grab this joint, and this joint, and my skin, and I can go skin, edit influences, add influence, option box, and generally I like to lock weights on this, but I'm going to try it just without, and we'll see how we go. So apply, and we're back. But now let's see if our pivot point is a little better on this. Yeah, that's better. I'm happier with where that pivot point is. So one thing I will say, however, is I need to, before I actually connect them back together, I would like to change the orientation of these joints at the bottom. So I'm going to actually Shift P them, Shift P those, Shift P these, and these here I would like to rotate. Like so. Rotate like so. And rotate so that it's pointing. I'm going to zero all those out for a second and come back to this one. straighten that one's orientations just a little bit. So that is the Y rotation. That looks about right. Alright, now I'll plug them back in. Now I'll do the things. Now I've changed their orientation purely so that the rotations in this for this section here are more in line with what you would expect for the foot, even though it's not pointing directly at the foot. I'm okay with that. At least I think I am, and if I'm not, we'll address that later on. But anyway, point being, if we need to change the pivot points if you need to change the pivot point of a joint when you're skin weighting, it's not the end of the world. It is good to try and make sure that you are happy with them before you start skin weighting, as it will make your life a little bit easier. But if you need to remove something, you can remove it and then you can add it back and then just quickly repaint that one little area, and that's exactly what we've done in this case. So selected all my joints, selected those, and now I'm going to edit, add influence, option box, and I'm going to leave the defaults for the time being, and I'm going to apply. And from here I can now come in and just readdress my weights in these areas. Now for the most part they should be pretty much what they were before, with the exception of these 4 joints. So this here should be unchanged, so that's good. So there's a little bit of tearing going on here, which is to be expected because all of these weights were like pulled away from this, but everything around the hip area is as it was, which is good. That's what I want. So I'm going to come and solve just this bit. So let's go down to our leg joints. They'll be in a different order now because we added and pulled things away. So there's my lower leg, there's my upper leg. I'm going to come and select some of the vertices in this area here. We're going to have a look and see what's going on. Okay, so a lot of things have been sent to the hand. So let's obliterate those first. No weights to there. Okay. So now a lot of these are sent to the root joint, so we don't want that. So we're going to tell that to go away. And then we're left with, so this is my left leg, so my right upper leg and right lower leg should have nothing to do with this area. And then we're left with hips, lower leg and upper leg, and for the most part that is correct. So now I can come through here, we can again I'm gonna just grab a chunk of vertices through this selection here, and again rinse and repeat. So let's come and have a look. So pinky, 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 pointer, pointer, all the way to the bottom. Wipe those out. This is my left leg. Wipe those out. Left, left, left ankle, hip, Yep, the hip weights seem pretty small, so that sounds about right. And for the most part, we're back in business. Okay, so a little bit of smoothing to go on up here, but that's not the end of the world. So let's go on and deal with that. So I'm going to smooth some of those values out there. Lower leg. The hips had some value in this area here. There we go. Few points on here that look like they belong somewhere else. So something coming from the pinky here. So oh. Right leg shouldn't have anything to do with that. There we go, let's smooth that out. Still looks like there's a few odd weights being pulled into this section here, so I'm just going to select that chunk, and again just come and check. So left, left, left. Right leg's getting data here, so let's obliterate that. Left leg, left upper foot, left lower leg, left lower foot. Left lower foot probably shouldn't have anything to do with this area. So we got ankle, lower leg, upper foot. Upper foot probably shouldn't have anything to do with this area either. So there we go. And it's all looking smooth again, so that's good. And same deal here. A few errant weights where the geometry looks a little jagged. Now it could be all the right things, but I just want to check anyway. And look at all the pinky fingers. There we go. Obliterate all those. Root joint really shouldn't have any weight over this at all. Right upper leg shouldn't have anything to do with this either. And hips, lower leg, upper leg. That sounds about right. And that looks smooth again for the most part, so that's good. And now we can assume preferred angle, and we're going to mirror those weights. And now we're back in business. Now we still may need to do some rotations on the feet here. Ooh, there's something I didn't do. I'm going to set preferred angle on these, just because their orientations are tweaked, and I didn't freeze their transforms. When I did the thing, because I'm an idiot, so I'm going to have to put these ones back again. Alright. Skin, edit influences, remove influences. They still have a skin cluster, they don't have a skin cluster. Okay, so now I can freeze the transforms. So now that's happy. Now I can add them back. Skin, add influences, add influence. There we go. Okay, we'll have to go and check our things again because our weight's probably going to be all muffed up again, and that's all fine. That weight is horrendous. We can fix that. Alrighty, you'll get there eventually, Neil. Alright, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to come in here and just clean out all of the fingers that somehow get put on here. Oh, it wasn't too many this time. So no fingers in here, so this is left, so we don't want any right. No right, left, upper leg, upper foot. Yeah, that's all those joints in that area, that's correct. And I'm going to mirror those weights straight away. So we're going to go and have a look at the weights through these areas here. So this one here, and just to make this a little bit quicker, I'm going to come in here, very roughly select that chunk, skin weights tool, lift lower leg, we'll flood that. Flood, 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 flood. Do 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 do. Flip those. Quickly go and just solve these areas back again. And yeah, this is the beauty of it. Like again, yeah, you lose a bit of work, but it's worth losing the work if it means you get your pivot points in the right places. Having those pivot points in the right places is crucial. So it is worth it, even if it is a pain in the bum. Mask my joints. Have to split some of those values a little bit, and again upper leg, add, set our values down, and let the leg bleed into the other leg. Could use a little more. Again, I'm gonna sort of go over quite substantially. Rely on my smooth brush to sort of help me out of there. This should have no lower leg either. Upper foot, lower foot, ankle, yeah, that's fine. Alright, now I'm going to put these back in there. Assume preferred angle. Oh, no. Rotate those down. These are 0, but I am going to set their preferred angle. So now, if I right click and assume preferred angle, they'll stay in their new position, which is still the same position they were before, but they have new orientations now because I went and corrected those orientations a little bit. All right. And so from here we should be pretty much good. There's still a little bit of something going on here we've got to sort out, so we'll go and sort that out. Let's go and have a look. This is pretty common for it to do this. I'll sit there and throw values around. There we go, there's good volume preservation in there now. Ankle's pivot point is much better. The hips need a bit more control through this area here. So we'll go to the hips and I'll give them a little bit more weight from the root. The root joint should really have very little, but I will give them a little bit more weight through here. And I'll smooth that out a bit. Right, then I'll mirror that. And now when we rotate this should, yeah, and this will, this is a bit deceiving because this should essentially be moving at the same time. It's going to pivot from this point here, so I expect it to essentially do that when it's rotating. So that is going to be okay. Assume preferred angle, and now I can check the spine, make sure that nothing weird happened when I did my things. That's all looking as expected. Check my arms. Check my fingers. They're looking as expected. And everything is looking about what it's supposed to look. Alrighty, okay, so one last little thing that we're going to do, I'm going to unhide my nails from in here, and I'm going to select my underlying skin. I'm going to save my scene actually, save scene, select my underlying skin. I'll probably get this in the wrong order because I'm dyslexic. So underlying skin and that skin, and then copy skin weights. No skins copied selected. Do these not have? Oh, these are not bound for some reason. Okay, that must have been the secondary skin cluster. Okay, so I'm gonna select this, select that. And we're going to skin, bind skin, just with the standard options. All of our nails are in the right place. Happy days. This skin, then this skin, and then skin. Copy skin weights. And now they should match exactly. They should stay exactly where they were supposed to stay, because their skin weight should be, at least at the contact level, identical to what they were before. And I ended up doing that for the eye ones up the top as well. But that is essentially our character weight painted. We can go and do a quick test on him to make sure he's doing all the things that we'd expect him to do. The torso is working well. The shoulders feel like they're working well. The legs are working well. You could spend a little bit more time like smoothing some of these areas out, but I'll end up getting to that. I've still got to go through and do bind all of this, and that we'll bring that up in another session. Primarily because we may end up using some additional joints to control some of these items, and we'll probably end up controlling some of these things in some differing ways outside of just skin clusters alone anyway. But yeah, for the time being, if we turn that off, that's our character skin weighted. One last little thing that I'll do is this here. This has a skin, so I'm just gonna, first of all, just make sure that I am in my preferred pose, my bind pose, and I'm going to copy the skin weight. So again, this one, and then that one, and then skin, copy skin weights. And now they should essentially have exactly the same skin weights as my mesh up here. You could probably smooth out these a little tiny bit more. Gotta be really careful around the mouth area here. Sometimes it's almost a per point operation. I'm going to smooth out these. It's one of the few times where I'm going to use replace. And I'm going to rely on it automatically redistributing some of these weights for me. I'm going to take everything away from these, just on the left side, because again my mirroring will do the thing. I'm going to rely on that to automatically distribute to the nearest joints there instead of that jaw joint. That should just help everything stay a little bit smoother. I didn't intend that to have any weight. But then I will come back to my head here. And again, you want to be really careful. So like I said, essentially it's almost a per point operation here. So I'm going to set my weight down a little bit. There we go. That's a little smoother through that area there. We'll go and test it out. And I'm much happier with those few minor adjustments. And so again from there we'll close that mouth back up and we'll mirror those across. We can check it out. There we go, all the weights have gone from that one. That's all looking good. Oh no, we have some weights. I'm just undoing back to before the mirror because that was from the mirror that did that. So here, those weights were okay. So what I might do, I might leave the mouth open and then mirror the weights. And then we'll close the mouth back up. Sometimes if the points are a bit too close together, it gets a little confused when you use the mirror tool, mirror function. So yeah. And yeah, now we're happy. I'm pretty happy with where this is at so far. And all right, we'll leave that there. All right, and I'll see you in the next part. And yeah, and in the next part we're going to probably continue weight painting a little bit, but we'll also start on the rig for this character, as a lot of the outfit and stuff will be sort of like weight painted, and we'll come up with ways to control it during the rigging process. All right, thanks for watching.